A big concern when it comes to all health is food allergies. So, if you've ever been to uh, a nutritionist or even doctors for inflammation, chances are that you've been asked to do food allergy, food sensitivity tests, or maybe you've already done these tests and then you found that there's a long list of foods that you need to avoid because they are problematic for you. Now, when you do ask doctors or when you do ask somebody who runs food allergy tests and who's been intertwined closely with looking at health from that perspective, they will tell you that you probably need to run food allergy tests every 6 to 12 months, as obviously this is going to change constantly, and you might find that you suddenly are able to eat certain foods which showed up as red flags earlier, or perhaps you're unable to eat foods that were shown as green flags earlier. So, whatever the case, this is impractical. So, do food allergy tests matter? Do you need them? That's what we're going to talk about in this basic video, and also tease apart some of the common elimination diet protocols and what they might include and why you might be advised some of those therapeutic diets. And then finally looking at what can you do you need to run these tests, do you need to follow this. The top foods that are advised as elimination diets are the removal of gluten and dairy. You might have heard of this, you might have already done this. Do you need to go gluten free? Do you need to be dairy free? I think the answer to that is a little bit more nuanced than everybody has to avoid gluten and dairy. And there's also the fact that there are nuances to the quality of gluten and dairy itself. If you're looking at gluten, the general recommendation is that you remove gluten, and gluten is an absolute non-negotiable, is what you'll hear many health practitioners say. However, there's far more nuances to this. Yes, if you do consider certain aspects of gluten available in the US, they can be extremely contaminated. However, if you live where you get age-old gluten as whole wheat or emmer wheat, spelt, and you've never had a problem, you've grown up eating, there's absolutely no reason that you should stop eating gluten. So there are nuances to the quality. Perhaps if you've grown up in India and then you've gone to the US, you might find that you do react to US wheat because it's quite contaminated. So there's these aspects as well. Same when it comes to dairy. Do you have access to grass-fed free-range dairy, which is from a farm and the cows are taken care of and you get dairy fresh? A lot of us do have access to dairy like that, in which case it's not a problem. However, if your access to dairy is from somewhere where it's farm dairy and there's a lot of usage of hormones and antibiotics, it is going to be problematic. So again, it comes back to the quality of food. But if you do have access to high quality wheat and dairy, and you're still reacting to it, that's a clear sign that digestion is extremely compromised, and the answer may not be removing it. And usually you see this reaction because gluten and dairy are very hard to digest proteins, and therefore it's a clear indication of weak digestion. So what matters is getting to the roots and trying to balance digestion, and then perhaps reintroducing. Yes, it might be very helpful to eliminate it while you're in the process of supporting healing digestion. Another common therapeutic diet that's recommended is the low histamine diet. A low histamine diet is one that reduces foods that are high in histamine, and histamine is a compound that is released in all of us when perhaps we are bitten by a wasp or we get hurt. It's a way that our immune system protects us, but once it's done the job, we need to be able to detoxify histamine. If we have a problem and we don't produce something called DAO enzyme, which is required to degrade histamine after we've used it, or if we have compromised liver function, we're not able to shunt out histamine, then the histamine can pile up and cause a lot of symptoms, anything from sinus to rashes, migraines, headaches, inflammation, anxiety. So there's a lot of symptoms. However, I'd really caution you against just loosely experimenting with these extremely restrictive diets, and I've come across people who've been put on these diets by those who haven't even been qualified to do so, just somebody who's read up about these things and said that I think you have histamine intolerance, and then this person has suddenly removed so many foods. So high histamine foods can be bananas, avocados, chocolates, pineapples, lychees, certain fish like tuna, shellfish, fermented foods, yeast. So there's a long list. So any food that has been fermented is high in histamine. Many acidic foods are high in histamine. So in the Healing Digestion course, I break this up in great detail. But is it really necessary? Once again, it comes back to understanding the nuances of digestion, and that's really not the first place for anybody to begin by just removing large food groups. Another very common diet that is in a therapeutic diet, which many people are now recommending, is the low oxalate diet. Low oxalate diet is recommended to a lot of people who have challenges with pain or the formation of kidney stones, and oxalates are just compounds which bind to calcium and can calcify. Again, it has to go back to the root of digestion. High oxalate foods can also be a very, very long list of foods, and do you really need to remove that? A lot of them are the raw greens, some cruciferous, chocolates, beets, buckwheat, amaranth. So there's a long list of high oxalate foods. But if there's really no challenges, if there's not joint pain or gout or kidney stones, again, there's no need to go down the road of these extremely restrictive diets. And we'll also come to the fact that in Ayurveda, they understood that there were compounds in these kind of foods which could be problematic for our body unless they are cooked. So there's a huge difference between eating spinach cooked with ghee and spices versus blending or juicing raw greens. The concept of juicing raw greens seemed ideal at one point, that we have access to the nutrients far more, and very quickly the world started to understand this concept called oxalates, and this really started being problematic only when we started eating raw greens. So if we go back to ancient wisdom, all it requires is that we simply start to cook our foods, and then it's really not a problem. A very popular book by Stephen Gundry on the problem and the inflammatory aspects of lectins and phytates in a lot of plant foods has just taken the world by storm. Now, everywhere you hear about the problematic aspect of lectins and phytates in whole grains, legumes, and a lot of very healthy food. And it's really concerning that this kind of information is spreading so far and so wide, making people stop eating foods that ancestors have been eating for generations of time. Especially if you're vegan or vegetarian, removing whole grains and legumes and beans and staying with just protein powders, tofu, and vegetables is an alarming trend, and which can only have foreseeable problems. Lectins and phytates again are compounds with ancient wisdom spoke that we must never eat our whole grains or legumes without soaking them for a length of time, where when we soak them, they release some of these compounds which are toxic to the body. We discard the water, we cook it in fresh water with spices and fats, and then we always pressure cook it. So there's a world of difference between eating cooked lentils versus simply soaking lentils for a short time and grinding it and making it into pancakes. There's a world of difference in how you can digest, and sometimes even the best of us with excellent digestion cannot digest foods that are not soaked and cooked in a slow cooker or a pressure cooker. So please don't fear whole grains and lentils, and they're really not a problem. They're only a problem if they're not prepared the right way, or if your digestion is compromised. And anyway, we need to address both of these aspects. The answer is not to remove the whole grains and the lentils. Some other diets that are also being spoken about is for IBS, a low FODMAP diet, which again removes a large list of foods. And to be quite honest, I really feel working with so many clients for so many years that I haven't ever had a problem fixing anybody's digestion. And the term IBS, I feel, is given a bit loosely. At times, it's just labeled when somebody is unable to resolve chronic digestive challenges. And then this blanket term of IBS is given and a label is put on the person. Now, IBS is suggested that you remove certain foods. Absolutely no reason to remove these food. I've never had to put anybody on a low FODMAP diet because I've always gone to the root of digestion and fixing it at the source. What matters is understanding the environment of the gut, the different states of Agni, and how can you help your body to secrete enzymes and whatever is necessary to have optimal digestion without requiring external sources as far as possible. And for sure, adding a probiotic, if you'd like to, is a far better approach than removing a large group of foods. So the IBS low FODMAP diet is one. Also, for candida overgrowth, a diet that is suggested is those foods that don't feed the yeast. And this again removes a large number of foods, which is really unnecessary because we have to understand why candida is overgrowing. And if you're in the healing digestion course, there's a lot of detail on the Ayurvedic perspective and the functional perspective. If you're in the master class, you can upgrade to the course. But the thing to understand is that you have to think of the body that's overgrowing candida as a stagnant pond, which is breeding pathogens. So we have to address the system as a whole. That begins by strengthening Agni. So there's so many of these restrictive diets, keto, paleo, again, removing large groups of foods. It's really, there's this thought that for all inflammation, the gold standard diet is the paleo diet or the autoimmune paleo diet. Again, I've never had to put anybody on any such diet. I've simply gone to the root of fixing their digestion with frameworks and guidelines, which is all that I'm teaching in these course and masterclass. So we need to get to the root of digestion rather than look at allergy tests and sensitivity tests. Remember that every allergy and sensitivity test is done at that moment in time. So if your body is in a chaotic state, if your digestion is in a chaotic state, it's going to pick up this information based upon that moment in time. And that's not really the picture of what you are when you're in a state of balance. So I really caution you not to go down the road of even doing these unnecessary tests of food allergies and food sensitivities, or trying to put yourself on these restrictive diets. Begin with the frameworks of healthy digestion. Just to wrap up this video on food allergies and food sensitivities, I would say never get a test. Don't look at the food allergy or food sensitivity test, and you don't need to go down that road. Instead, start to apply the core frameworks and principles, which are far more important. And just to go back to all that we spoke about, if you do find that you're having problems with gluten and dairy, you could try a short elimination where you work on the principles to help you restore digestion. And of course, look for pure A2 dairy, A2 non-homogenized dairy from a farm. If you have access to dairy, again, think of dairy as subtle nuances, that if it's fresh milk had warm with ghee and cardamom to help digest, cinnamon to balance the blood sugar, and you don't drink it chill where it congests the channels, it's a world of difference. Ice creams are best kept out. Cheeses, unless they are fresh cottage cheese, are best kept out. If it comes to gluten, once you improve your digestion and you have access to clean whole wheat, emmer wheat, then have it at lunch when digestion is strong, and balance it with a lot of vegetables and proteins. It should not be a problem once you restore digestion to a good state of balance. If you do have some signs that you're reacting to histamine, focus on trying. If you're in the course, there's a description about the different states of Agni. Usually histamine becomes a problem when you have a Tikshna Agni or a very fiery state. So the answer is to just calm that down, not have too many acidic foods, and bring the gut environment back to a state of balance. If you find that you have pain and tendency for kidney stones, and never ever have raw greens. In fact, as a rule, never ever have raw greens. Always cook greens and cruciferous with ghee and spices. If you have IBS, again, take away the labels and focus more on applying the principles and frameworks to improve digestion. And don't go down the road of extremely restrictive diets like keto. It's just not necessary. You could try for yourself if you find that you're doing. I do hear people saying I do brilliantly on keto. And if you have any problems with digestion as a whole, always remember to put fats. Don't have low fat diets. Ghee allows us to digest. It's like kindling the Agni, and ghee combined with spices simmered in the ghee help us to break down complex aspects of food. For example, if we are eating fats, we need to be able to digest the fat. Otherwise, we form what is called ama or amavisha, and this is what shows up in modern day labs as high LDL, high triglycerides, low hormones, because the body can't utilize the cholesterol to make hormones. So we really need something to help us digest the fats, and fenugreek does that using methi. Fenugreek in cooking can do that. Just soaking it in water can help us to digest the fats. Cumin seeds can be wonderful for fat metabolism. You can simply use a lot of cumin powder in cooking. If you find there's a day that you're feeling uncomfortable, just soaking 1/4 teaspoon of cumin powder in water and sipping it can be a great way without even drinking the sediment at the bottom. Always cook the greens, otherwise you will find the bone tissues compromised. Cruciferous veggies, I get a lot of questions, are they problematic for the thyroid? Yes, they contain something called goitrogens, which depress thyroid function, but the ancient seers knew that the answer was to cook. The problem again started arising because of two reasons. One is that people were starting to juice raw broccoli and raw kale. That's not the answer. The second is overdoing it. So when you think that something is containing sulforaphane, good for the liver, and then people were asked to have 3 cups a day. We don't need that kind of. More doesn't. If a food is really good, it doesn't mean that we need a lot of it, and that's where the problem arises. So keep in mind that the ancient wisdom had few principles that helped us to use food the right way. So, and we never needed enzymes. We never had problems with the problematic compounds in those foods because we cooked them. So the main thing, cook your food with ghee and spices, or if you're vegan, then make sure that you use some oil, sesame in the winter, coconut in the summer, or more fine-tuned if you are able to look at your body through the healing digestion course. Also, Ayurveda's recommendation for the right food combination, which there's a long list in the course and a shorter list in the masterclass. So if you've been confused about food allergies and sensitivities, I hope this video answered them. And remember, frameworks and guidelines over restrictive diets.